encourage everyone to turn on your camera so that we can see all of your lovely faces. All right. All right. So again, guys, good afternoon. Just to introduce myself, I am Christian. So I'm your party brewer for today. Okay. So I want to welcome everyone to our first session of the Spill the Tea behind the scenes look at HR. Okay. So we want to get behind the scenes with HR professionals and find out how and what they did on projects and what they are actually working on and what went wrong, what went right. So those things, okay? And this event is actually brought to you by PPEARL Consulting and Singapore Human Resources Institute, or SHRI. So we're partnering with them. SHRI is a leading non-profit professional HR body, which represents a strong network of members comprising individuals and organizations across diverse industries. So they represent over 6,000 human resource professionals, okay? Please allow me to introduce the expert bestie for today, the founder and CEO of PPRO. Please welcome Natasha KK MacLevion. Please type hi Natasha or hi Nat on the chat, guys. All right.
Hi everyone. Hi everyone. As you can see, we went crazy with the tea puns and analogies, but so loving it. So happy to see you. Happy Friday. I even have a pair of earrings that says spell out Friday, and I wanted to wear them, but I thought maybe it was a bit too over the top. Maybe next time. So we were actually expecting a cozy group of 10 people, but who knew that we would have over 80 signups? So thank you so much for being here. It's such a pleasure to do this, and just so happy to see you and old faces, some old faces. So just a few words about PPEARL. We are a consulting firm that started in 2004. We sold ourselves and relaunched in 2020 with a consulting model geared towards the future of work. Our team serves both our clients and our network of over 1,200 experts. And these are consultants, business leaders, thought leaders, researchers, and HR tech partners. Together, we deliver consulting work, coaching, instructional design, organizational, and people diagnostics. Now, our experts deliver work across 6 broad domains: people, digital innovation, business, sustainability, change management, and we also have our own in-house design team that can create collaterals and videos, just everything, our own design team for our clients as well as our experts. Enough about us, but do check out our website and find out more if you're interested at www.people.com. Do turn on your cams. I think Christian wants to choose the celebrity of the day, and he's not able to if he cannot see you guys. Meanwhile, whilst we wait for the questions to come in, Alvin, what do you think? Adding on what Rahul is saying.
Well, that's definitely interesting, and I think that's definitely something that does connects back with a lot of things that we do, and I definitely liked the phrase that Rahul has actually mentioned. How do you deal with ambiguity and manage ambiguity? I think that's really in a very fine line the differences, right? And that is probably something you and we can resonate with, because we do have somebody that told the both of us, look in front is a wall, but if you turn behind, there's nothing behind. Take another spin behind in that direction. I think that's basically, we sometimes we tend to bang against the wall in that sense, and not trying to look around us. And there are basically, open spaces that we can actually move around with. I think that's one. And the other bits about changes and failing fast. And it again goes back to one of the things that what we're trying to do in an organization itself. Yeah, which is then, how then do you fail fast? And importantly, I think what we're also trying to build within the organization is also then that psychological safety. That it's okay to make a mistake, right? It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to say that you do know. It's okay to admit that that is something that you do not have that expertise on, which is okay, and actually start to learn from there and actually move on. And I deliberately like this quote from Einstein, right? And it basically says that if you make the same mistake twice, it's not about making mistakes anymore, right? You can make mistake, but you learn from it and actually move forward from there. And don't make the same mistake twice. And if you try to do the same thing twice and you expect a different result, that's basically insanity, right?
Yeah, indeed. Christian, do we have any questions from the audience?
I think we don't have any questions. I think we can proceed with our fast talk for the questions. So we actually prepared some questions to all of the attendees, so we can gauge and see what are their thoughts.
Okay, let's go for it. Over to you, Christian.
Sure. So yeah, we're actually have the slides coming up right now. All right. So the first question, right? For this year 2022, repair what is broken or start from a clean slate. Okay, so we actually prepared poll for you guys. So just answer. We're good? So for the second question, is digital transformation a cultural journey or an organizational capability? All right. So for the third question, what do leaders reward more? Is it talent or hard work? All right. And then for our final question, with digital transformation, who benefits most? Is it employee or the company? All right. So thank you so much, guys, for answering all of those questions. And our team will gonna tabulate all of the results later, and I'll gonna show you what's the result. But meanwhile, while we're waiting for that, I think AP has a question here. How difficult is it to build a business case for HR initiatives? Alvin mentioned a bit, but many HR finds it as the big challenge. So, yeah, I think you can answer that.
Yes. So maybe let me go first, okay, Nat?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So that is essentially one of the biggest challenge that I would say. Be it a technology investment or be it a investment in any initiatives, the practicality pieces is that we all need money, right? So one, be good friends with your CIO. Second, be the good friend with your CFO. Right. So that's joke aside for a Friday. I always do believe in this element is that sometimes we need to be a little bit patient. Patient in that sense that sometimes it may not be the right time. But once you see the right time, the right moment, you need to seize it in that sense. So let me give you a very, very practical examples. The organization that I've been on, right? The organization has been holding back a lot on development. Development spends has been probably one of the lowest that I've actually seen. Close to nothing. It has been always about, going for free courses, self-learning, 70-20. The 10 is always forgotten, 70-30 in that sense. And then we kind of did a survey, right? And the results came out that, one of the lowest scoring data, one of the lowest questions was about development plans and stuff. So that was when, the teams, the management team has been reviewing through the data and say, okay, this is the lowest. And I think that was where I started telling, we are probably going to get, spend about 100,000 if you want to subscribe to say a LinkedIn Learning or any of the online training platforms that is out there. Why not let's do it that way and actually get everybody to use that. And we kind of did that with a poll, not poll, but kind of a pilot. So sometimes it's not about, one key tips that I can have is always then start small, have a pilot, and then show success and actually go with that. And one of the pet peeves that I always used in that LinkedIn implementation was that, the cost of a LinkedIn implementation is cheaper than a year subscription on Netflix, right? If somebody can pay $100 over $200 or even $300 for a year subscription on Netflix, what about an organization paying $30-40 a year, for a LinkedIn? That gives you probably 16,000, 17,000. I'm not promoting for LinkedIn, but that's one of the things that we have actually done. And we kind of, after about, 3-4 months down the road, showed the success and actually show the management team, look, our employees are using it and it's actually off the charts. On average, employees are spending about 2 hours, a month, 2 to 3 hours a month learning. And when we went out with the communication with basically everybody, I'm not going to tell you what you're going to learn. And the example that I did with them was then, you can learn ukulele, you can learn how to take photos, or you can learn how to code Python. I don't really care. Learn something that you feel that's important for you. And when people start to see that, and when the management team start to see success in some of the initiatives that actually do, I wouldn't say money will start to flow in, but you will start to gain that track record. So start small, show success, check back and actually report back to the management team. You spend $100,000. Here's the ROI for you. Here's something that we actually come back to you. And then they will start to see that and actually get it involved, get them to actually to look at all these things. I think those are some of the, I would say, learnings I've actually gotten over the last couple of years in asking for money, in essence itself.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Actually, I'm going to do a quick segue here because you're talking about ROI and tracking and so on. And well, Alvin, we've known each other for a while, and your expertise is actually in analytics. So could you tell us a little bit more about, what are the important metrics to track, when you're in HR? And how do you go about? What's your advice to HR professionals who are starting out on this journey?
I think, again, going back on the journey to start off with HR analytics itself, I think the first piece is then don't think too complicated, right? Keep it simple. What are the key, I wouldn't even use the word metrics. What are the key results or numbers that you want to show or actually share with your management team? Common ones, attrition rates, right? And don't have to even invest in a visualization tool, because I'm presuming most of us here have an Excel spreadsheet or even Google Sheets. That's free, right? So utilize those tools and actually start playing around with the data. Start playing around with, showing data. Start getting the hang out of how do you tell the story with data. That is the most difficult thing. Once you get a hang of it, people start to ask for more. Then you have actually hooked them on such things. So if I were to answer your question, Ned, there isn't a matrix that would be applicable for all. For a professional firms, a consulting firm, they will typically look at things like operating expenses, or I would say employee expenses as a percentage of operating expenses. Kind of looked at how then that mixed around with the business matrix itself. Most importantly, connect back with what your business is actually very keen on. What is the key priority? If it's about attrition, then by all means look at where people are leaving, why people are leaving, and what segments and what can you draw from an inference point of view in that sense. So I would then say that that's a little bit in terms of how then do you get started in that sense. And I always like to use this terminology called empathization of data, because if you make use of because the data itself is data, right? It's ones and zeros. If you start to tell a story, that is when you start to bring out the value, right, of data itself. And it will take time. You take practices, and it takes a couple of iterations before you actually get there.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for this. Rahul, what are your views? And also maybe bringing in AP's question too, about building a business case for HR initiatives.
I would say, I think to what Alvin also just mentioned, let's take a simple thing. If you're a business leader, try to think from the point of view of the business leader. Every month, the business leader has to perform. There is a customer element into it that we need to create value for the customer. And then there are some other stakeholders that we need to work for it. Remember one thing, there are a lot of pressures on performance. If the business leader performs, only then the business leader gets the right to transform. So I think the key needs to be perform to transform. We are talking of two things. Most of our business measures or matrices are very transactional in nature. We are talking of month-on-month kind of a thing. But to achieve that, we need to be very transformational. So again, the same thing is we need to balance both. I'll give you some sort of a thought in your minds, on everybody's mind. Every organization wants to be a high-performance organization. That's why we do what we do. Yeah, we want to improve the performance of the organization, not only in terms of profitability itself, but to create that whole performance kind of a culture everybody talks about. Performance can be increased if we enhance our efforts. But unfortunately, efforts are very discretionary in nature. My efforts would be different than yours, and your efforts would be different than the others. But culture plays a very important role. And culture is built by the leadership of the job. If we are able to sell this to the leader through a story that Alvin was just mentioning, maybe by using sometimes data to it, I think that's what the key is. Think you need to engage with the business leader. You need to tell the business leader how to shape the organization so that towards then there is a performance that comes on. Now, there are certain aspects where trying to find out ROI and everything is sometimes not necessary. Sometimes, for example, we don't calculate the ROI of paying salary on time. We know that's the hygiene factor. So I mean, I find it difficult when some organizations try to find out ROI on the learning agenda. I mean, it's your ticket on the table. I mean, to enter into something, to be in the participating in the business, you need to do that. I mean, I did that in my past life when I started my career. But now I laugh it off when people say, oh, we want to look at learning initiatives ROI. I would say it's a very good kind of a methodology where you can actually utilize or waste your time and show that you're adding value. But as you just rightly said, Alvin, I mean, I think that simple metrics for a business should be what is your personal cost to OPEX ratio? And what is your OPEX to sales ratio, OPEX to profitability that you're getting in it? And any initiative that you bring in should add value on these two matrices. Sometimes other matrices could be made. I mean, organizations have different kind of matrices, but these are the ones which are the most important ones.
Nat, I think you're on mute.
I clicked unmute. Thank you. We have the results of the survey. Can we see them? And let's have a discussion around this. Okay. So in year 2022, an overwhelming amount of people are saying start not to rebuild, right? And not repair. So what are your views about this?
I mean, I can start that. My view is first we need to repair and then we'll only get the money to rebuild. So ideally we need to do both hand in hand. But again, it's the same thing that what I said earlier. First, perform to transform. Transformation is important because that's your existence. But performance is where the bread and butter for now will come, where you'll get money to invest in the transformation.
Does anyone see anything here that they want to comment on, Alvin? Or anyone else in our...
Well, this was something that I really struggled to put the results on, right? To repair or to rebuild. Sometimes as what Rahul has mentioned, to repair first before to rebuild. I think that makes a lot of sense. But also then sometimes going back to the ROI topic itself, what is the ROI of a rebuild versus a repair in that sense? And I'll use a very simple analogy of a car, right? It's just like if you touch wood, bang a car. Sometimes the insurance company will tell you, I'm just going to write off your car and I'm going to pay you an amount because the cost of repair is going to be more than buying a new car. So to me, it's again going back to the crux of it, sunk cost versus what has not come in. A lot of people tend to think about that sunk cost piece. So I think that's also, there's no clear answer, to be very honest. So it really has got to do with the reality of things there. The ROI. And Rahul, I really like your example, the ROI of running payroll, because I did calculate something along that line. It came up to nothing, right? Changing internal to external. What's the ROI? There's no ROI in everything.
Yeah, I think we actually have some questions from our audience here. So I think Jimwell said, how will you define a successful HR digital transformation, especially that a lot of complexity emerge when pandemic hits the world? So, do you want to answer this, guys? Nat?
The successful digital HR digital transformation, I think, my answer about this is that it boils down to the uniqueness of every business, there is no hard and fast rule, and also depends a lot on several things. Where was the business to begin with in the beginning, before the pandemic or before the transformation started? Were they digital native or were they already very much a brick and mortar company, right? So that's my very quick response. And if we went into the more detail around this, it could go on and on. Yeah. Alvin, Rahul, what do you think?
Alvin, go ahead.
Okay, so for me, I think one key metrics and one phrase that I always hear as a formal consultant, right? A lot of people define success as go live, right? As an import, and if I use operations as an analogy, the operation is successful, but the patient is dead, right? So that will be the analogy that I always use, is that the key success factors of a digital transformation, on the digital implementation, no matter what you want to call it, is then the usability, the experience that you're actually getting for your employees. That is going to be the key success criteria, not the go live. The go live is opening the door. Who walked in is going to be the key.
And I would say, I think for me, the key is the focus and the clarity. What is the challenge that we want to solve through digital? Are we doing it because we really like digital? Or are we trying to solve some kind of a problem over here? And how do we achieve the desired outcomes? Now, it's very simple. At this point in time, everybody talks about digital, and digital will solve all the problems. Yes, it's going to reduce that ambiguity for us. I'll give you one typical example. All of us use Google Maps from going from point A to point B. Over the years, in last 5 to 6 years, I think because of the so much of machine learning, Google Maps have improved quite a bit because of the data that they have. But still, we are the ones who make the choice which route to take between the 2-3 routes that Google Map throws at us. Yes, there may be different matrices to say this route has no toll, this route has, you will save time, this route is more in terms of kilometer, but we have our own decision criteria. So I think digital will help us or enable us to make decisions easier or easily. But digital is not going to make decisions for us. I think once we have that clarity in mind, then rest is, again, we need to look at user experience, why we are doing these things. And I think in the pandemic, that's more, if I'm a leader during this pandemic situation, I cannot meet my employees. What is one thing that I want to know? Are my employees engaged? All of our organizations have so much of data. Yeah, and we can draw so many conclusions out of it by looking at the ability to tolerate ambiguity and then trying with the demographic. I think if we keep it simple and give those kind of inputs to the leaders to make those decisions quickly and effectively, I think that's more important.
That, Rahul. We actually have a question from AP again. So I'm a bit surprised by talent and hard work question. Many of us would want our leaders to reward hard work, but in actuality, many are still rewarding talent because it is the shiny object or halo effect still affecting most of the leaders. So what do you guys think about that?
I would say that goes in right from the education system that we go through. I think the clear differentiator, how we start from which educational institute that we go to. And when we measure everything on the intelligence and the hard work of the person, and that remains deeply engraved, I think both are important. If you have a talent, you don't do a hard work, you can't do anything. You need to both. It's like you need to have a big glass to have 500 ml of water into it. A glass without water, or a small glass with a small capacity with 500 ml on top of it, it's not going to work. I think both the things are important, talent and the hard work. And there needs to be a different kind of a philosophy. The philosophy that I always have used, that you pay for performance. Hard work and performance, as I said, efforts come, but you promote for behavior and the talent.
Very well said. And one question here from Joanne. Should SME or small companies go through digital transformation?
I'll take that. That depends upon what is the need that you want to solve, what is the challenge you want to solve. Irrespective of whether you're a bigger company or a SME or a medium-sized company, what is the challenge that you want to solve? Two things. I think if we clearly define digital into two simple things into transformation, do you want to digitize your core to reduce the process time? Or do you are looking out in terms of building new business models out over there? And that depends upon the strategy of the organization that you want to go into it. Digital for the sake of digital should not be the motivation to do digital transformation.
Thank you so much for that, Rahul. And I think we can jump to our hot topic for today, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to address Joanne's question as well.
Sure.
I think, I will agree with Rahul on the sense that, it doesn't matter if you're small or large, but often in small organizations, there is very little room for fat. Do you know what I mean? So everyone plays a very critical role. And if you have the right people within the team and they're all playing that critical role, then digital can help a lot in making things move even more smoothly, even faster, even more effectively. Yeah. So again, it's about what's the organization? Who are the people that you have within the organization? And what do you want to achieve for the future? Yeah. That take.
All right. Thank you so much, Nat. Again, as I've mentioned, we have like the hot topic for today. I know all of or most of the HR people are aware of this, the Great Resignation. So we just want to like have your thoughts about the Great Resignation. Alvin, you wanna go?
Yep. Right. So the Great Resignation, right? Probably the latest and the hottest topic in HR. Before that, it was, I think, transformation and digitalizations of HR. So for me, or in terms of Great Resignation, maybe a little bit from a Singapore context in that sense. So despite the fact that I'm actually looking after global, but I kind of start to see a little bit of a trend happening in Singapore, and in particular in some of the organizations itself. Right. One big element that we need to be aware of is that it might be something that is sporadic, even within the organization. Meaning to say, you might have certain functions that has high attrition, but the rest of the organizations has actually very, very little attrition or actually close to stability. I think that is also where we need to be a little bit mindful in terms of looking at the data, in terms of seeing where it's happening, because the fact that it's called the Great Resignation doesn't mean it's happening everywhere, right? So I think that's one. And in particular, one element that I've just started to see in my own organization is that we do then have a fair bit of a churn happening in places like, for example, in the manufacturing spaces, where a lot of our workers and our operators, are non-Singaporeans, and if you put the social context behind it as a result of COVID, they were planned to be here for about 2-3 years, and then they can get to go back to home, every year, right? At the end of the year, before Chinese New Year, because a lot of us are Malaysians, a lot of them are from China, and they get to do that in the pre-COVID days. But as a result of COVID, that became, that 2-3 years became a 4-5 years, and people starts to get, a little bit detached from the families, and they would tend to then, okay, money is one thing, work is another thing. I think I need that social interactions. I need to be with my family. And I think that's where it's happening. And if we're going to expand a little bit further in that sense, we also tend to be mindful that Singapore, from a workforce perspective, is pretty heavily augmented by non-Singaporeans. So there is also that element in the sense of how then we need to pay attention in terms of this whole topic about the great vaccination itself. Because from a data angle, that was then that element that I just started to see, in within my organization in that frame.
I would add to that, Alvin. I think, have you guys heard of infant mortality as a term after the Great Resignation?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So that's a impact after the Great Resignation. We saw Great Resignation, people are leaving, and people who leave and join some startup organizations or the organization who lose talent and get in new people, they need to be focused on infant mortality, which means something like that. People look out for familiarity. They want to see in a familiar environment that gives them that kind of a comfort. And with COVID-19 happening, most of the people who join new organization, they join in kind of a hybrid environment or sometimes into a global role sitting out of Singapore or any other part of the world. They are into this virtual environment and they miss this familiar kind of an environment. And if organizations don't pay attention to create that familiar environment for them, they would just move on. And that's why they call it as the infant, because the tenure in the organization is smaller. And mortality means they will also again leave you. So I think it's not only that we need to create this sense of purpose. I think that's one hook. And everybody has a different emotional hook. For some people, it could be an emotional hook on the purpose. For some people, it could be, as Alvin, you were saying, moving away from the families. So the key to me is the flexibility. How flexible as an organizations we are within the kind of a working kind of a, for some organization, tech structure, permanent establishment is a key. For example, for some organizations, it's very important the people who are responsible for the P&L cannot take the P&L decisions outside that particular country. In some countries, that's a law. So we need to be a bit flexible in this kind of a framework if we can try to get that done. And I think that is more important. It's not only the Great Resignation, we should also focus on this infant mortality, which is a new thing which is coming in as well. So as we'll keep on putting our energy in trying to backfill some of these positions, and the people who will join, they won't stay. So that is equally important as well.
Yeah. Well, we have a question from April, and April, sorry, we haven't addressed this yet. It was asked quite a while ago. Which emerging trends will have the biggest impact on HR moving forward?
I can start, Alvin. You can start from your. I think one thing is for sure that the way that I see it from my organizational perspective, from where I am in the organization, to say that 2 or 3 things that I clearly see. I think there is a lot of use of data that has started. It's a decision making. I think to make decision making easier, that has started, which means all the organizations have a lot of data, but that data needs to be democratized. And in the kind of a context to look at most of the organizations, which are international organizations, also governed by privacy laws. In some countries, you can democratize data and people can look at it, but you need to look at for both angles. As I was saying, you need to balance like ambiguity. It's similarly like this, you need to balance both aspects. Second thing is there is a lot of digital, but I am normally looking to digital from a human experience kind of an angle that you clearly need to see to make the user experience easier. Span of attention is going to go down. So any technology that we bring in should not be very complex, something which is very easier. I don't know about you guys, but at least for me, I'm sick of Netflix nowadays. Yeah, because to me, Netflix is boring. For me, the new trend is moving back to the YouTube because it throws every time you watch, the machine learning function in YouTube has gone down to the next level. And somehow I started looking at in the content which comes on a daily basis kind of a thing with a specific interest on the... So it's not only that what you want to actually have in terms of the machine learning and the trends that you're looking at, but also I think each and every individual is different. So customization is also the key that I see it as a trend. But remember, customization comes at a cost. Yeah, so all these parameters that I see, and different organizations have different parameters or decision criteria for this.
Well, for my case, it's Rahul, definitely resonating with your topics on things like data. And I think AP has also mentioned about working from anywhere model. Right. I think that is basically, for me, one of the key trends. I think that's one. And the other pieces is then about experience. And I'll start off with the first one, is then working anywhere. Right. And I'm not, maybe we can have a little bit of a short poll or raise of hand. How many of you have actually started writing, a hybrid working policy? Right. HR loves to write policy, but this is also then the reality, right? If you scan LinkedIn, you start to see jobs hybrid, in there, starting to see that, it's okay to be working in Zimbabwe, as long as you can meet the time frame in Singapore. I think that's one element. We talk about the great vaccination. It's also then giving us a little bit of an opportunity right here. We need not always hire from Singapore, right? The marketing lady that I talked to you about actually is sitting in Poland. It's not in Singapore. So I think that's one element that we need to. I do then see the big shift in there. The second piece is then about experience that Rahul has actually mentioned itself. And I think in particular itself, and I'll touch a little bit of different segments, is then we also need to understand the demographics of people or employees that we are actually dealing with. And I'll use a personal example of my own daughters, right? The 4-year-old knows how to turn on the TV and go to YouTube and search for, Coco Melon in that sense, and start watching TV, right? And when she gets into the car, she tells me I want to hear stories on Spotify, right? So that's the generations of employees that we're going to deal with in the next generations. And to them, every screen out there can be touched in that frame. So it's then about the consumerizations of that experience that they get from the consumer space, and they expect the same landscape and the same experience in the workspace. And I think that's where the detachment and the gap is probably going to come in. And I think that is where not only HR, but the entire organization needs to actually start to move, a little bit ahead. And to answer some of the questions on digital transformation, I think the reality has been that, like it or not, we have to digitalize. We have to move forward in that frame. It's probably not a choice in a couple of years anymore in that frame. If I were to be able to piece up everything that I'm seeing from the questions itself.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Alvin. I love the story about Cocomelon and Spotify, your daughter. Yeah. So any other questions? Nat, do you have anything to add?
No, not on my end.
All right. So just a question, guys. How do you usually unwind during Fridays? Since not today is Friday, right? So how do you guys usually hang out or spend the day?
Well, for me, Friday is a non-working evening day, right? So for me, Friday is a day where I don't take any calls after 5-6 p.m. It's also a day where I kind of block my calendar in the office, where I spend a little bit of the time, take the week, reflect back on what have happened, and actually do a little bit of learning. YouTube is one of my favorite places to learn, right? And to be honest, my 11-year-old daughter is also learning everything on YouTube. She learns to sing and everything on YouTube in that sense, and dancing and stuff. So for me, that is where it is. I like to unwind on a Friday, kind of prepare a little bit on a weekend, and also then preparing for the week ahead. I think that's my routine on a Friday, and I'm kind of a little bit of a boring person. So that's how I tend to spend my beginning of the weekend.
And as for me, if you just, I mean, I'm just transitioning into a global role. And yes, Fridays sometimes are a bit tough now, but earlier I used to have meeting free Fridays, and Fridays used to be reflection day. That's what I used to keep the half day of the Friday to do it. But one thing is for sure, after 4:30, uh, Friday I actually spent with my daughter. I mean, that's the kind of an unwritten rule in the family that I'll take her out for dinner or her favorite ice cream kind of a thing. Because I think it's also very important for us to unwind ourselves and spend time with our family. I mean, whichever, some people try to go out and play tennis or whatever it is, but I think it's very important to unwind and self reflect how you did what you did the week that passed by, not only in terms of your professional kind of a goals and achievement, but the personal one as well. Because if your personal goals are achieved or you're at peace with your personal self, only then we'll be able to perform professionally.
Wow, that's interesting. I think Rahul, your future self will gonna thank you. All right. Well, yeah, I think we need to like proceed with our next slide. Yep. So again, this is like the spill the tea behind the scenes look at HR. So you can guys scan the QR code or click the link on the chat box to give us your valuable feedback. Okay. So I'll give you time for that. And then not anything to say to the audience, to our master tea spillers.
Well, I wanted to thank both of you very, very much for your time and for imparting so much useful and insightful information to all of us. And yeah, really appreciate it, especially on a Friday. So do wish you a wonderful Friday and weekend. And to everybody else as well, thank you for taking time to spend with us. Christian, do you have a winner for the celebrity of the day?
Absolutely. So yeah, we're actually announcing now the winner for the celebrity of the day. And the winner will receive an awesome shopping voucher that will be sent by the team after the session. So the team decided that the winner would be
Drum roll.
Joanne Chu. Congratulations, Joanne.
Hey, congratulations, Joanne.
Thank you.
All right. So we're gonna reach out to you for the prize. All right. And but before ending this event, right, we want to invite everyone, if you can still turn on your cameras, because we're gonna take a photo with the whole team. And then of course, if you have like drinks on your end, you can just like have it on the screen as well. So let's take a quick photo. Already, guys. All right. So one of our team will gonna take it. Ready? So in 3, 2, smile. Okay, let's have it one more. Again. In 3, 2, smile. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.